my voice from there without a microphone?
It's alright. Give you plenty of room there. I was putting away that camera there, Pete.
Oh God, I'm going the wrong way.
Oh no, she's not there yet. Okay, right. Well, I'll just do an introduction. Is the microphone picking me up now? Yeah. Okay, well, I'll just come a little closer. So it's like, welcome to everybody that has joined the live stream or will be joining this live stream from Buckfastleigh Town Hall in South Devon. It's a pretty packed venue here. I think we're just finalising the technical issues, and then we'll be underway. So, but obviously it's a live stream, so it's just going to be running continuously through till whenever the event finishes, around about 9:30, 10 o'clock tonight. So obviously people will dip in, dip out, but thanks very much for joining us on this first of these this series of 5G events. There's more to be announced around the country. So welcome, and we'll catch up with you later. First speaker, by the way, is John Kitson, and then I should be taking the floor, and then we'll have a break. And then I believe there's a Q&A with some Skype guests from the US joining us, so we'll see how that pans out. So catch you later. And my thanks to Richard for facilitating the live stream here. Much appreciated. John, we are live. We are live.
Yeah, it might take some time, but then...
At least on flight mode. Sorry, can everybody put their phones on flight mode, please, because we're live streaming. Ian's going to live stream the event. Thanks. In this area here. If you can't see the camera can't see you.
1 2 1 2 testing 1 2.
Squeeze through.
Like powering entire cities.
That's right. Right, because if we all get a smartphone, we can save enough of it. To run every home in Aberdeen.
Q&A,
yeah.
When someone asks you a question, if you can repeat the question so that people at home will hear what someone asked before you answer, you know?
Oh, I understand. Thanks. Okay. Okay, yeah, 2 minutes.
Hello.
Testing. Okay. Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for coming tonight. Thank you so much. Nice to meet you all. It's a pleasure to have so many people here who care tonight about this problem. Thank you so much. So, bit of housekeeping. Welcome everyone. This evening we have 2 talks before the interval. Afterwards we will have questions. So I'll be going first, and then Ian Crane, who I have the pleasure to have here, will be speaking after me. And then we'll have the Empower group, Cal and Lena, talking online. So we'll have them up on the screen. There's a strict rule of no smoking anywhere in the building. Toilets are on the ground floor, at the bottom of the stairs, and they are on the right. In case of fire, there's 2 exits, one at the back of the hall and one in the main entrance. Gather at the back of the co-op opposite the Jellyfish in the car park. And if everyone can turn off their mobile phones and put them on airplane mode, please. We do have some people here who are electro-sensitive. And please keep passageways and doorways clear to enable good access. There are 4 wardens who have armbands. Any questions, please consult one of them. At the end of the evening, please exit the building fairly quickly by 10:30 at the latest. Thank you very much. So we're going to have a 10-minute interval after the first 2 speakers. We've got a great little table at the back there, which has got information about protecting yourself from wireless radiation. So I'd strongly recommend going over to that. We've also got some info on ES UK and the great work they're doing. We've also got Marie over there with the organic Riverford food. And then we've got Jackie, who's got a competition to win a free box of oils, food grade essential oils, which is very nice. So welcome to have a look around those during the interval. So, okay, so we're going to start with talking about smart meters. Smart meters. Okay. So what is a smart meter? Smart meters are the new generation of gas and electricity meters. They're being installed in homes across Great Britain at no extra cost to replace the traditional meters, including prepaid key meters most of us currently have ticking away under the stairs or outside our homes. So that's from Smart Energy GB. What do smart meters do? So smart meters send automatic meter readings directly and securely to your energy supplier, securely apparently. The accompanying in-home display is a handheld digital device that sits in your home and allows you to see how much energy you're using and what it's costing you in pounds and pence. So they often come with an in-home display with the smart meter. So one of the companies promoting smart meters is Electro-sensitivity. This is one of the pages on the website. Then we've got an advert here for a smarter Britain. So this was on the TV.
People of Britain, it's time for a change in how we use our energy. Our current system is outdated.
It's 19th century technology in 21st century Britain. It's time to move on.
Which is why Phil and I are campaigning for a smarter Britain.
A Britain where we all have a smart meter, where we are the boss of our own energy usage. A Britain where we can save our energy.
And our money.
But doing something better.
Like powering entire cities.
That's right, because if we all get a smart meter, we could save enough energy to run every home in Aberdeen, Manchester and Cardiff for an entire year.
That is amazing.
Let's get on board, Britain.
Choose the greener, cleaner, smarter Britain. Never mind building a smarter Britain. I just want to save a few quid. For me, the wee smashers. That's what smart meters are about, no? Replacing your old energy meter. You know, that money-gobbling monster that lives under the stairs with one of these. Sort of a nerdy pal that helps you keep tabs on your energy spend.
Manifesto for a smarter Britain. Okay. So up next we have another video which gives us another perspective on smart meters. And I'm playing this one by popular demand.
Maybe that's the next slide.
Sorry? Oh, sorry.
Hey, Sally, looks like you could use some help with your out-of-control energy usage. But how? With a smart meter. Yes, the new smart meters connect to all your smart appliances, like your TV, home computer, cell phone, hi-fi, heating systems, and a lot more on the way. Carefully monitoring how and where you consume energy. Isn't that great? And once you're on the smart grid, we could even help you manage those smart devices and remotely dial down your energy use. Hey, we're here to help, even though our driving force is profit. For little to no extra cost, smart meters continually emit EMF radiation, broadcasting info about all your behavior to your energy company and other third parties. They'll be able to see what you are doing and when you are doing it. Opening the fridge, switching channels, turning on the light, or running a bath, we'll know, and we'll be able to bill you with absolute accuracy. No more meter readings. Prices may rise, but look at the convenience. Your sleep, anxiety, heart rate, ability to concentrate, general well-being, and blood cells may change in proximity to a smart meter. But you won't need a meter reading. It's a fair compromise. And smart meters have never caught fire. Never. But wait, there's more. We'll even help you plan meal times, too. Once smart meters are everywhere, we'll be able to introduce and one day require time of use charging to help you save money. Want to pay less? Great. Why not have dinner at an off-peak time, say 10 p.m.? We're only thinking of you, Sally. Just like when we dropped our charges after the oil prices plummeted. Not. You'll be able to cook dinner and save money. Isn't that amazing? There's no way a smart grid can be hacked. Millions of different varying devices, all connected wirelessly to one grid, represent no security threat at all to you, your data, or our national power network. A smart grid is a safe grid. What's that, Sally? How do smart meters work? Well, I'm glad you asked. They constantly communicate using non-ionizing radiation spikes at hundreds of times per minute, which we tend not to mention, but keep that under your hat. We'll constantly gather information about what you're doing by recording which appliances you use and when. Our signals are sent wirelessly, along with EMF pollution, in and out of your home using an unrelenting stream of pulsed microwave signals, which are recognized by the WHO as a Class 2B carcinogen. And we'll be able to use your information to help target advertising, provide your lifestyle choices to insurance companies, and warrantless surveillance on who is doing what in your home. So many future applications to help you, Sally. So far, we've had no reports, none at all, of these smart meters bursting into flames. It's just never happened. We realize there's no legal obligation for anyone to accept a smart meter, but we'll keep on implying there is to get as many installed as we can by 2020. Hey, we're making money here. Smart meters.
So some of you might be thinking, you might be thinking, why did I get interested in this topic? Well, I had a smart meter installed on my property when I was in Japan, and I started to get a lot of headaches and sleepless nights and just feelings of ill health and malaise. And so I then started to look a little bit deeper, and that's what got me basically, going with these sorts of evenings. And I'm just so honoured to have all of you here tonight. Another thing is I've lost my mother a few years ago. She had a wireless deck phone in her home and she was developing headaches, and I didn't realise at the time that that would go on to cause her to have a brain tumour and then die. So I've been very passionate about researching about this topic and finding out more about what the doctors and the scientists are saying and making people more and more aware. And then I started up my YouTube 5G awareness, and we're hoping to get this out viral through, and finally it's being streamed as well by Ian. So, okay, moving on. So, smart meters and health. So we heard in the video that they communicate using non-ionizing radiation. Spikes at hundreds of times per minute, your sleep, anxiety, heart rate, ability to concentrate, general well-being and blood cells may change when in proximity to a smart meter. Signals are sent wirelessly along with EMF, electromagnetic frequency pollution, in and out of your home, using an unrelenting stream of pulsed microwave signals which are recognized by the World Health Organization as a Class B, 2B carcinogen. So, carcinogen, substance capable of causing cancer in living tissue. And we've got a video here showing live blood analysis of people standing in front of a smart meter before and after on their blood cells.
While industry has failed to do any peer-reviewed studies on smart meters and health effects, a growing body of independent research is now starting to accumulate.
In our second set of tests, we're using the smart meter. Before the exposure, we see the same thing as we saw in the first samples. Normal cell walls, fairly separated and looking healthy. So after 2 minutes of exposure in front of the smart meter at about 1 foot away, we see a totally different story. Sample 1, you can see a lot of degradation in the cells. The cell walls have been broken, and you see changes in the cells which are called mycoplasma. It shows a mutation to the cell. In the second sample, we see a different type of degradation to the cell membranes. You can see a corrugation here. This is called bottle cap formation, and it's known that this occurs due to oxidation or exposure to free radicals. So this third subject, when we did her sample, she had to be pulled away from the meter after 45 seconds because she complained about an increasingly severe headache. And here you see a phenomenon called rouleau, where the red blood cells are stacking up, which makes it very difficult for the blood to deliver oxygen to the tissues as they would be their normal function. Every single one of these is a degradation. Every single one of these shows a trauma to the blood cells. And that came from something, and the only variable was the smart meter.
What's going on here? This is a wireless device which is unproven scientifically, which all the evidence so far proves is dangerous or questionable, which should therefore be studied intensely before it's released to the public. Clever people called the technology smart to make it seem intimidating so no one would question it. Some smart ad man came up with that and got paid $300,000 to call it a smart meter so you would feel less knowledgeable, which they know we feel, and then you wouldn't question the smart people putting it in your house. So I call them not smart meters, dangerous meters.
Okay, so next, 5G. So what is 5G? And this is on 5g.co.uk. 5G is fifth generation mobile network with super fast download speeds, can handle multiple high demand applications at once, from connected cars to the Internet of Things. Emergence of more Internet of Things, smart devices, phones, fridges, lights, also drones and RFID chips. And I noticed that in the UK now, you can be fined if you don't put a chip in your cat or dog.
John, can we ask people to turn their phones on and they're streaming their phone?
Yeah, can everyone turn their phones on airplane mode or off if they've got
But
them
no
on?
streaming as well, because you're frying us with the streaming. It's as bad as being a smart
Okay, well we have to get it out to people. Okay. Anyway, so IoT, smart meters, smart fridges, smart motorways, smart cities, smart phones, smart bins, smart watches, smart baby monitors, smart pills, smart bands, automated lighting. For example, street lamps, pitched as efficient and energy saving, everything connected, making decisions without human input and massive data gathering. Now this is from The Guardian. Then the FCC announcement of 5G. Tom Wheeler is the chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, a US government agency responsible for regulating the radio, television and phone industries. The FCC regulates all interstate communications such as wire, satellite and cable, and international communications. So now we're going to hear from Tom Wheeler announcing 5G, the rollout of 5G. Try one more time.
Big game changer is that 5G will use much higher frequency bands than previously thought viable for mobile broadband and other applications. Such millimeter wave signals have physical properties that are both a limitation and a strength. They tend to travel best in narrow and straight lines, and they do not go through physical objects as well. But brilliant engineers have developed new antennas that can aim and amplify signals. Now, to make this work, the 5G build-out is going to be very infrastructure intensive, requiring massive deployment of small cells. I'm confident that the actions will lead to a cornucopia of unanticipated, innovative uses, and will generate tens of billions of dollars in economic activity. And that's damn important, because it means that U.S. companies will be the first out of the gate. And that is why 5G is a national priority, and stay out of the way of technological development. Unlike some countries, we do not believe that we should spend the next couple of years studying what 5G should be or how it should operate. The future has a way of inventing itself. Turning innovators loose is far preferable to expecting committees and regulators to define the future. We won't wait for the standards. We're already seeing the industry gearing up to seize this opportunity. Verizon and AT&T tell us they'll begin deploying 5G trials in 2017, and the first commercial deployments they're talking about are expected in 2020. And we're not done. As part of our July 14 action, we also plan to ask for comments on opening up other high-frequency bands. Many of the high-frequency bands that we will make available for 5G currently have some satellite users, as well as some Defense Department applications, or at least the possibility of future satellite and defense users. This means sharing will be required between satellite and terrestrial wireless, an issue that is especially relevant in the 28 gigahertz band. But if anyone tells you that they know the details of what 5G is going to become, run the other way. If something can be connected, it will be connected. Hundreds of billions of microchips connected in products from pill bottles to plant waterers. We must departments will play an important role in determining how we fulfill this national priority. You can be sure of only one thing. The biggest Internet of Things application has yet to be imagined. Tens of billions of dollars in economic activity. And that's damn important.
Okay, so we've got Senator Blumenthal. I don't know if anybody's heard this man speak recently. He was at the US Senate Commerce, Science and Transportation Committee hearing on the future of 5G wireless technology. Senator Blumenthal quizzed wireless industry representatives about the studies on the health effects of 5G.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, thank you for having this hearing. We've heard from a lot of witnesses from you today and others previously about the very important potential of 5G technology. It promises to bring us a new era of connectivity with internet speeds as much as 5 times faster than what we have today with much lower latency, and that's all a good thing. But 5G, as you well know, also uses higher frequency waves that don't travel as far and will rely on a network of hundreds of thousands, potentially millions of small cell sites. And the question then is, are there any health implications, any public safety implications to those additional sites that are likely to be located close to homes, schools, workplaces, and closer to the ground? Correct?
Correct, Senator. Yes.
So in December of 2018, I sent a letter to FCC Commissioner Carr asking him to cite for me recent scientific studies demonstrating the safety of this technology. What research has been done, where has it been published and compiled. He has essentially failed to do so, and just echo the general statements of the FDA, which shares regulatory responsibility for cell phones with the FCC. If you go to the FDA website, pretty unsatisfactory. There basically is a cursory and superficial citation to existing scientific data saying, quote, the FDA has urged the cell phone industry to take a number of steps, including support additional research on possible biological effects of radio frequency fields for the type of signal emitted by cell phones. I believe that Americans deserve to know what the health effects are, not to prejudge what scientific studies may show, and they deserve also a commitment to do the research on outstanding questions. So my question for you, particularly Mr. Gillen and Mr. Perry, how much money has the industry committed to supporting additional independent research? I stress independent research. Is that independent research ongoing? Has any been completed? Where can consumers look for it? And we're talking about research on the biological effects of this new technology.
Thank you, Senator. And I think, thank you for your focus on the issue. Safety is paramount, and as you alluded to, we rely on the expert agencies, rely on the findings of the FDA and others as to the requirements to keep all of us safe. There are no industry-backed studies, to my knowledge right now. Happy to visit with you as to what opportunities you think there needs to be more studies, and we're always for more science. We also rely on what the scientists tell us.
So essentially, the answer to my question, how much money? Zero.
I can certainly follow up with you, Senator. To my knowledge, there's no active studies being backed by industry today.
Anybody else know of industry commitments to back research, fund it, support it, to ascertain scientifically the health effects?
Senator, I'm not aware either, but I do know that with small cells especially, you're going to have lower power levels, and of course as from a carrier perspective, you want to be able to manage interference so that that interference is the lowest interference possible. So I would think that some of those studies or some of that information could be utilized in looking at the health consequences, but no, I'm not aware of any.
So there really is no research ongoing. We're kind of blind here as far as health and safety is concerned. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
There we go, Dr. Sharon Goldberg. Now, in October 2018, Dr. Sharon Goldberg, she's an internal medicine physician. She testified at Michigan's 5G small cell tower legislation hearing. She provided evidence about the health impact of 5G and electromagnetic radiation. We're going to hear a little bit about that.
I'm Sharon Goldberg. I'm an internal medicine physician. I've practiced medicine for 21 years, and my background is mostly academic internal medicine, hospital-based, clinical research, and medical education. I am going to skip many of the things I wanted to say because I didn't realize it was only 5 minutes. Wireless radiation has biological effects, period. This is no longer a subject for debate when you look at PubMed and the peer-reviewed literature. These effects are seen in all life forms: plants, animals, insects, microbes. In humans, we have clear evidence of cancer now. There is no question. We have evidence of DNA damage, cardiomyopathy, which is the precursor of congestive heart failure, neuropsychiatric effects. So 5G is not a conversation about whether or not these biological effects exist. They clearly do. 5G is a conversation about unsustainable healthcare expenditures. Why do I say this? We've been sitting on the evidence for EMR and chronic disease for decades. And now we're seeing all these epidemics appearing. So diabetes is the first epidemic. I think most of you know the statistics. They're very scary. 1 in 3 American children will become diabetic in their lifetime, and if they're Hispanic females, the number is 1 in 2. So what does this have to do with wireless radiation? Wireless radiation and other electromagnetic fields, such as magnetic fields and dirty electricity, have been clearly associated with elevated blood sugar and diabetes. That is what the peer-reviewed literature says. It is not opinion. The closer you live to a cell tower, the higher your blood glucose. That is based on hemoglobin A1C measurements. So the idea with small cells of putting the cells closer to people's homes and bedrooms scientifically is very dangerous. And from an economic perspective, it's dangerous.
Okay, recent news article. Questions raised over 5G links to cancer as mobile network is tested in Bristol. New tests have found clear evidence linking mobile phone radiation to cancer in animal tests. As more countries ban iPads and mobile phones from the classroom, could Wi-Fi be giving our children cancer? This is from a top cancer expert, Professor Anthony Miller. Then brain cancer is now the leading cancer killer of kids. Claire Edwards. In May 2018, Claire Edwards, UN staff member and whistleblower, raised the issue of 5G and electromagnetic radiation with UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. And he's a physicist and electrical engineer.
Mr. Secretary General, UN told that they are the most important resource of this organisation. Since December 2015, the staff here at the Vienna International Centre have been exposed to off-the-scale electromagnetic radiation from Wi-Fi and mobile phone boosters installed on very low ceilings throughout the buildings. Current public exposure levels are at least 1 quintillion, that's 18 zeros, 1 quintillion times above natural background radiation, according to Professor Olle Johansson of the Karolinska Institute in Sweden. The highly dangerous biological effects of EMFs have been documented by thousands of studies since 1932, indicating that we may be facing a global health catastrophe orders of magnitude worse than those caused by tobacco and cigarettes. Mr. Secretary-General, on the basis of the precautionary principle, I urge you to have these EMF-emitting devices removed immediately from these buildings and to call a halt to any rollout of 5G at UN duty stations, because 5G is designed to deliver concentrated and focused electromagnetic radiation in excess of 100 times current levels in the same way as do directed energy weapons. In line with the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, to protect, respect and remedy, 5G technologies must be subjected to an independent health and safety assessment before they are launched anywhere in the world. There is currently an international appeal signed by 237 EMF scientists from 41 nations urging the UN and particularly the WHO to exert strong leadership in fostering the development of more protective EMF guidelines, encouraging precautionary measures and educating the public about the considerable health risks, particularly the risks to children and fetal development. Mr. Secretary-General, I think we have a unique opportunity here at the UN office at Vienna. Since our medical records are digitised, you have the choice and the possibility of releasing data on a closed population exposed to off-the-scale levels of electromagnetic radiation in a metal-walled building, which exacerbates the situation, to establish if there have already been abnormal health consequences for the UN staff here in the last 28 months. I urge you to do so and stop any rollout of 5G immediately. Thank you.
Sorry, because we are talking with someone that is a little bit ignorant on these things. We're talking to the Wi-Fi systems?
On the ceilings of these buildings, Wi-Fi boosters and cell phone boosters were installed without consultation, without information to staff in December 2015. The situation here is extremely dangerous. I have heard anecdotally of many people who have had health problems. I don't know if they are related, but the precautionary principle would dictate that we use our medical records to look into this and that we remove these dangerous devices immediately. Thank you.
Well, I'm worried because I put those devices in my house.
Not a good idea.
I will have to, I confess my ignorance on this. We will have to, but I'm going to raise this with WHO, which I think is the organization that might be able to deal with it properly, for them to, put someone, their staff or organizations to work on that, because I must confess I was not aware of that danger. To the extent that I have put those things in the rooms of my house, in the ceiling.
would suggest that everybody start looking into this issue, and particularly into 5G, which 237 scientists from 41 countries consider a threat that is far worse than the tobacco and the cigarette, the asbestos threats of the past.
Well, maybe I've learned something completely new, and I hope it will be very useful to me, but I confess it's the first time I hear about it.
Suicide fear over weapons-grade technology being tested in Cornwall. Now, we heard the UN staffer there talking about weapons. Mark Steele. So, I had the honour of meeting Mark Steele through Ian Crane. I went to his excellent event, Alternative View, last year. He's got a new one this year where 300 people came. I met a lot of like-minded, great, caring individuals. And I met Mark, and I attended his court case, and I heard about what he's involved with. And Mark's background is an engineer, mainly working in research and development around weapons technology. He's also worked at secret weapons sites, and of his experience has gained a solid knowledge base around radio frequencies and microwaves for use in war. So he had his court case where he came up against Gateshead Council, and they sought to get an injunction put up against him to stop him from talking about the suffering in the people in Gateshead. And I've met the people for myself when I went up to Gateshead, and a lot of people have been having negative health effects with the LED streetlights there. So the judge refuses to gag anti-5G street campaigner. The judge came out in his favour, and Ian was absolutely amazing. And we had 40 people come to that court case. And now they're seeking to actually imprison him. So his party, Save Us Now, which you can find online. And here's an interview I was doing with Mark Steele about 5G.
5G?
What is 5G, Mark, for the people who are new to 5G? What exactly is it?
5G is a number of different things. It's not just, 5G is a weapon system. It's not 5 gigahertz, all right? So let's get that to one side. The industry are selling 5 gigahertz in different systems now, and people are going, oh, I've got 5G. No, you haven't. 5G is a weapon system, all right? And what I'm going to define 5G for you now. 5G means more. Doesn't matter what it operates at, it means more, and it means a lot more. A lot more what went before. A lot of the stuff that's already killed quite a number of people, whether it be adult death syndrome, whether it just collapsed in the street from a signal, whether it be cancer, and all these other things. So 5G is a lot more of that, which is basically lethal to biology. The specifics of 5G, the blanket covering of 5G, it operates in the sub-gigahertz range.
So the sub-gigahertz range, he's referring to the street lamps that cannot operate below 1 gigahertz because 5G can't travel very well, but the lower frequencies can penetrate more easily. So if you have them outside homes, they can penetrate through our homes. New LED streetlights may double cancer risk, new research warns. That was in the Telegraph. And here's my talk with Mark about the LED streetlights. A lot of people are seeing the heads of their street lamps being replaced, these antennas being put on top of them. Now these things are emitting, like you said, they're operating on the sub-gigahertz range because 5G doesn't travel well, so they're lowering the gigahertz. And these street lamps are emitting radio frequencies that can be measured using devices, can't they? Microwave measuring.
Yeah, a normal meter up to 3.5 gigahertz will measure the blanket background radiation. What you can't do is measure a signal that's coming at you like a laser. Because where would you see it? You can't see it, so how do you measure it? I mean,
Right.
and you get lots of this narrative coming from people, you know, well, it does no, this kind of, look, this is correct. But what you touched on before, John, you were talking about LED street lighting. LED street lighting has only been in Barcelona 3 years. It's double the breast and the prostate cancer. The pulse modulate, these are blue, these aren't LEDs in your home, these aren't LEDs in the roof in your home. These are blue, phosphor coated, pulse modulating, so if you change the square wave pulse, and you will smash your cell function to pieces.
It's John. You're doing well.
Yep. Okay, so we had a bit about the trees coming down as well. They're cutting down the trees to make way for 5G because it doesn't travel well. More information on this. Lots of tree felling along the train tracks. Danish school experiment, they found that the crest didn't grow when it was near the Wi-Fi router. Barry Trower, now this interview is on my YouTube channel 5G Awareness, that's number 5 letter G Awareness, and Barry goes into depth, also backs up Mark what he's saying about 5G being a weapon system. It's 40 minutes, I recommend everybody see that. I don't have time to play it today. And he also talks about how MPs, councillors, school governors, CEOs can be held liable if their legal action is taken and it's using their name, or if they claim something with their name, they can be held liable, but their title can protect them. So if they say, I say this is MP, I say this is governor, it acts as a protective mechanism. Now there's something called a notice of liability that I'm looking into, and they've had success abroad sending these out, and they've had CEOs resigning from utility companies. So I just want to play this. I'm going to have Cal and Lena on as well as after the interval. I'm just going to play a quick preview. Let's move forward. Okay. This video.
So I sent the notice in on Tuesday, and I sent it to all the people that you sent to. It was 25, plus the 5 people that I already sent to. So that just happened on Tuesday, so the mail would have probably been, some of it might have got there yesterday, and some would be hitting today and or tomorrow. And we'll see what happens with that. On January 30th, 2015, the CEO of Quarks Utilities, the installer of these meters in British Columbia, received more than 100 notices of liability from people in Kelowna. On February 4th, he received a separate notice of default from Cal. On February 4th, the CEO of Quarks Utilities resigned from office. It's worth noting that this action was also sent to the chair of the BC Utilities Commission, and in late 2015, he quietly resigned as well. Kelowna was one of the 3 initial groups that began to implement the liability action. Let's take a look at what's happened so far in the United States with groups in Seattle and Detroit. After being defaulted by just 21 people, 3 of the 9 Seattle City Council members announced they would not be seeking re-election, including one who resigned before her term was up. And on March 13th, the defaulted CEO of Seattle City Light, the 10th largest public utility in the nation, announced his resignation. In Detroit, it is all about war. The utility DTE has cut electricity to several homeowners, including the elderly as winter approaches, as part of what could only be called a campaign of terror. After being defaulted by another 21 individuals, the Michigan Attorney General began calling for a free opt-out. 4 of the 8 Michigan Public Services Commission's officers being held liable are no longer listed on the Commission website. And a city attorney in Warren, Michigan has also resigned, but not before sending a letter to one of the claimants stating that the utility has a budget of $20 million set aside for paying off state legislators. Especially at the outset, we can expect some resistance. In the Detroit Sea Group, 13 out of 14 who started with an analog meter have successfully kept it. The 14th was heavily propagandized and eventually accepted a supposedly disabled smart meter. And in New York, a lawyer named Andrew Pedersen wrote a commercial liability process very similar to our liability action.
To the governor, to the head of PSE&G, to the head of National Grid, to the head of New York Power Authority, and to the head of the New York State Public Service Commission. And I sent it out, I put them on personally, accept their oath of office, and I tell them that they're violating my rights, and if they don't stop violating my rights, I'm holding them liable for $300 million each. She got a phone call the next day after the letters went out, my letter, it was then certified, and he said, "We're so sorry that I don't know why they were threatening you, but you don't have to have a smart meter. I'm sorry, you know we'll never turn your water off." So it does work.
I then spoke with an anonymous insider working at a utility where the executives are being held liable.
Well, I'm an employee with a major utility, and what the utility here has done is they have put together what seems to be like an actual war room filled with newspaper clippings, photos of the actual activist leaders themselves, photos of what people do to block radiation. Some seem very successful. Copies of flyers for events, copies of photos of the locks with the notices beside them, with liability actually stated on the notices, and they're taking very seriously this action by people who are fighting back. They seem to be nervous about it. They don't seem to be as confident as they portray to be around here.
So here's the plan. Phase 1 was about seed groups with a limited number of participants. And while there is no way to say for certain what factors are involved in each resignation, liabilities are indeed resigning. With the launch of the InPower movement, we are now in Phase 2, and with your participation, along with thousands of others, our goal is to stop this agenda completely. While the same liability action can and will be used in Phase 3 for other major issues where harm is being done, the target at hand is to get these so-called smart meter devices off all of our homes and return to safe and sane technology.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to announce the next speaker, who I have the honour of speaking with tonight, an amazing individual who I met last year at his Alternative Youth Conference. He's doing amazing work, a true activist, probably the #1 activist in the country. I'd like to welcome Mr. Ian Crane.
Do I really need a microphone? It's a lot easier for me to work without. So get the technology sorted here. Oh, I need this, do I? Whoa, there's always one, isn't there? Right. Firstly, let me say, thank you to John and to Derek and to Chris and Margot and all the others involved in putting this event on tonight. It's wonderful. Say again?
Could you stand on the stage so we can see you?
Unfortunately, that's not going to be possible. And you don't need to see me anyway. If it's just a disembodied voice, that's okay. What's probably more important is hopefully what you're going to see on the screen, but we do need to put the projector on first, I think. So I don't know how many there are. How many people do we have here, Chris? Any idea? 200? 250? 200. 200. Okay, well, there is currently 444 watching this on the live stream, thanks to Richard, who has the camera down here. So we're reaching out tonight to some 700 or so people. And hopefully, say again? 50 turned away at the door. Okay, so I guess there's going to be another one of these somewhere else in South Hams in the not too distant future. And hopefully there will be events like this being held all around the country sooner rather than later. Because the last time I was in this situation where it is 6 years ago, I was touring the country. In fact, exactly 6 years ago, I started a tour called Fractured Future, where I was trying to introduce the term fracking into the vocabulary of Middle England. So I had 63 dates around the country between February and July of 2013. I just finished the tour 2 weeks before Quadrilla rocked up at Borkham. And today, what we have is community activism around the country, which has been very effective so far in shutting fracking down in this country. And the model by which the anti-fracking community has emerged scares the bejesus out of the establishment, because it's a model that they are not used to dealing with. Because there is no hierarchy, no structure, no NGO. It is masses of community groups. And there's certainly well over 100 active, very, very active community groups, primarily in the north of England, a handful in the south, primarily in the southeast, of course. But there are also many other groups and individuals around the country who are making a massive contribution to making sure that fracking never gets underway in this country. But with 5G, we do not have the luxury of 6 years. We probably barely have 2 years, because the testing of this is already being rolled out, and in my opinion, the effects are being felt. And of course, there is a massive campaign of denial, or pointing the finger somewhere else, as we'll see. And we have to do this at a time when the country is being deliberately submerged in chaos. This is very, very deliberate. And if anyone's really bored and trying to get to sleep one night and needs a cure for their insomnia, then check out the AV7 presentation that I gave 6 weeks before the EU referendum, where I unfortunately pretty much predicted everything that has unfolded so far. And I don't claim any special insight, I simply read the scripts. And the game plan has always been to take Britain out of the EU with the deliberate intention of destroying the economy and the culture and everything about civil society. And this is, of course, what's unfolding now. And, of course, here I am standing in the constituency of one of the new MPs for Tel Aviv, aren't I? Yeah. Oh, not quite? Okay, I'm outside. Oh, thank goodness for that. Where am I? In Cambridge? Cambridge, okay, that's a lot better. Is that still Anne-Marie? Yeah? Oh, okay, Mel's right. Well, just across the border, of course, you have one of the new MPs that is being financed by Israel. Joan Ryan, of course, is desperately trying to deny the video where she was captured actually accepting or acknowledging that there was £1 million available to bring down certain MPs that were a problem for Israel. And all this is part of the chaos. To set up this central party and be a massive distraction, whilst there's all this other stuff like fracking and 5G and the dropping of standards, because one of the things I can assure you that is going to happen when we come out of the EU, hopefully on March 29th, is that there's going to be massive pressure from the sociopathic corporatists that you have just seen, like Wheeler, where they make the observation that the profitability, the role of the corporations has absolute precedent over everything else, and that includes human health and well-being. And so what we're going to see is the lobbyists from particularly the US trying to get the UK government and regulatory bodies to drop their standards, to be importing GM foods, to be adopting the standards that the US has for things like organic food, where you can have 10% contamination and still label it organic, whereas in Europe it's 0.16 of 1%. So, you know, we have massive challenges ahead, and, you know, there has never been a more crucial time for individuals and communities to participate in the political process at every level. And, you know, whether that's the local council, district council, county council, or MP. At least we won't have any MEPs to deal with after March 29th, I hope. So what I'm going to do is, John has done an absolutely outstanding presentation, and I mean, I hope that people who've seen that on live stream will be motivated to perhaps invite John, and you know, he's one of a growing number of people who are well versed in this subject and are more than capable of taking it out to communities around the country. And I don't think John... Say again?
Is it going out on live stream?
Right now, yes.
So by cable, or is it going out by 4G?
Unfortunately, it's going out via Wi-Fi. But anyway, it's not 5G. It's not 5G.
Yeah, but it's 4G. So we're getting fried right now.
Well, then probably best that, you know, we leave, because there's 700 odd people between, you know, live stream and here who are sufficiently interested to remain and watch what's occurring. And, you know, unfortunately, it is an issue. There is massive increases in electrosensitivity, massive increases in people suffering the symptoms of electrosensitivity. But right now, we have to use these tools to be able to try to prevent it going to the next stage. So my point here is that John and others, like Mark Steele, you know, these are the perfect individuals to be inviting to your communities and perhaps holding an event in the town hall and encouraging people to research for this for themselves, because, you know, my mantra has always been that I do not expect and do not want anyone to take anything I say at face value. I don't profess to be an expert in the subject. I am simply trying to stimulate people's curiosity, because what I've learned over the past 15 years is that it is only when people start to take a look at something for themselves that they really appreciate what it is that they're up against, and then hopefully they're motivated to take an active role in it. So hopefully, maybe not when you go home tonight, or maybe, but hopefully over the next few days, then you'll take a look at this for yourself, you'll revisit some of the things that you've seen here on the screen tonight, and then you'll start to think about perhaps how you want to get involved. So let's take a look. I'm going to take a look at some of the issues that have got us to this point. Anyone remember this from Bridgend? Okay, it's 12 years ago now, in 2007, where there was a spate of suicides in the South Wales town of Bridgend. And you know, it's in the paragraph here from the Telegraph. This is actually a reminder of what occurred from last year. Bridgend was a town that the rest of the world had largely ignored until a spate of suicides among teenagers and young adults suddenly gave it worldwide notoriety when these deaths came to light last month. 17 people aged between 15 and 27 have died in a little over a year, all but one by hanging. And to this day, there is still no official report or analysis or attempt to understand what actually occurred here. There were a couple of people who did do their own research, but not financed by academia, or certainly not the government. And one of those was Barry Trower, who lives not too far away from here, I think, and was referenced by John in his talk. But this is from The Sun. It says, suicide is not something you can catch. The mystery behind the small Welsh town of Bridgend, where 23 men committed suicide in 1 year, revealed. A decade ago, a small area of Wales gained notoriety when dozens of young people began taking their own lives. The official number of suicides in the spate, which the Welsh Assembly classified as taking place over 2007-2008, was 23. This is the crucial element here. There were rumours of internet suicide cults and pacts, and even a conspiracy theory that suggested young minds had been damaged by radio frequencies. Well, I believe it was Barry who, through his research, simply made the observation that coincidentally, every one of these teen suicides lived within, I think it was about 80 metres of a phone mast. But somebody else came along and did a separate study, and they were able to ascertain that every one of these teen suicides was either on or had recently come off of a course of Ritalin, which is an extremely pernicious drug that basically turns the developing mind into a zombie. It's a very strange drug because it's actually a drug that the pharmaceutical industry is trying to get approval for marketing freely over the counter in colleges and universities around the country because it enhances concentration. Yet in the developing brain it has a very different effect. So, I mean, we don't know, could it possibly have been a combination of factors here? Could it have been the combination of the exposure to the radio frequencies whilst their brain was under the influence of what is a pseudo-SSRI? So, that was Barry Trower's input, but worryingly, nobody knows what happened. And then we have the situation that John alluded to. This is much more recent. Bristol University faces growing anger after student suicides. And of course this was being blamed on stresses of exams. There have now been 10 student deaths in a little over 18 months, a number of which have been confirmed as suicide. And I think it's about a month ago that one of the student union leaders in Bristol was fired from his position and cut loose from his course because he was casting aspersion about the relationship maybe between 5G tests in Bristol and the student suicides. So this is from the University of Bristol, 5G UK test networks. They were getting a bunch of money from the British government. A world-class 5G technology test network aiming to put Britain at the forefront of the next wave of mobile technology, potentially adding up to 173 billion to the economy by 2030. The University of Bristol's Smart Internet Lab, along with 5G experts from the University of Surrey and King's College London, has been awarded 16 million by the Department of Digital Culture, Media and Sport to develop a cutting-edge 5G test network. So academia, and particularly these outrageously compensated chancellors, nice work if you can get it, huh? I don't think they'll be coming knocking on my door anytime soon. But needless to say, with student numbers diminishing, then they're looking to take whatever input, financial input they can get. So the universities in the UK are becoming very much like the US, where they're effectively reliant on funding by the corporations and from government. So guess what? They don't tend to dissent. They tend to look after where the check's coming from. So this is from a website in the UK, EMF Guru Consultancy. Student suicide clusters, is microwave radiation and its technology to blame? And here's the observation. This is very sad that no one is looking in the right places nor asking the right questions. 9 students from the University of Bristol in the UK committed suicide during the past 2 years. Bristol University is blaming the students themselves, arguing they suffered from mental health problems. One student was on campus for just 3 weeks and others were in their 3rd and final years. Similarly, York University also had a suicide cluster of 5 students within 1 year period in 2016. Of course, there are many explanations for why student suicides are on the increase, and the narrative below is peddled by all the mainstream media outlets, i.e. basically that it was stress. Well, once again, could it be the combination of factors that, whilst a person is in a sort of state of minor depression, if you like, particularly students who are leaving home for the first time and find themselves in this strange environment called university, once they've got over Freshers' Week, that is, then is that, and the exposure to the 5G, is the combination causing this to be a problem? But no one's looking at it because they don't want to find the answer, because if you look for it, you might find the answer that you don't want. So certainly no one is looking here. So here are a few questions any parent or student can ask university administrators. How far away is student accommodation to the main computer science suites that house Wi-Fi transmitting and ancillary equipment? How far away are the Wi-Fi hotspot antennae in relation to the accommodation building? Please ask administrators if they are aware that exposure to microwave radiation from 900 megahertz, 900 megahertz is the point at which microwave frequency commence, and upwards is biologically dangerous, because we now have clear evidence that exposure to microwave radiation induces rare brain tumours and heart cancers. And ask your chosen university administrators whether or not they are aware of a condition called EHS, electro-hypersensitivity, and if they are clued up, whether or not they have any areas on the campus free of microwave radiation. I mean, all valid questions, but surely one would think that if people are asking the questions, the university would go, why are people asking these questions? Is there something here that we're missing? Is there something that we're not looking at? Well, when you're receiving a big chunk of change running into 7 figures from the government to do research, you're not really going to be too motivated to look into these things. And of course we have this issue that is very much prevalent in the US and the UK military, which is the military suicides. Spiralling while government stalls, now is the time for action. And of course the military suicides are conveniently blamed on PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, linked to battlefield experiences. Yet many of the ex-servicemen, or even existing servicemen, who are suffering from PTSD and are committing suicide, haven't had what would normally be classified as a frontline battlefield experience. But what they have been is exposed to battlefield technology, to microwave battlefield interrogation technology. And as Mark Steele will affirm, this is basically the same technology that is now being rolled out as 5G. And Mark would certainly argue that the purpose is very similar, because the battlefield interrogation technology is designed to scan and literally provide an electronic picture of everything that the antenna array surveys. Well, that is precisely what the 5G technology has the capability to achieve. To literally scan everything within the antenna array and feed a picture back to whomever might be interested in. Here's a report from, I believe it's the 1970s. If I can see it. I think it's the 1970s. This is from the Naval Medical Research Institute. This is a US report. And my point here is that some nearly 50 years ago, it was very much acknowledged that radio frequency and exposure to radio frequency, particularly high power radio frequency, could be life-threatening. Now, if you get really close, then there's no question that it can cause physical damage. And I have a scar on my hand from my student days when I was working on a transmitter, an old valve transmitter. It was a marine transmitter, and I actually put the driver valve into its socket whilst it was plugged in. And needless to say, it burned a hole right through my hand. Of course, there was no blood because it was instantly cauterized. But that's what happens in terms of the physical impact. But here, of course, there's no physical impact until you start to feel, nausea or depressed, or maybe suffer from nosebleeds, which is one of the particular symptoms of the children up in the Gateshead area. Here is a quote from the report from the abstract. It says, more than 2,300 references on the biological responses to radio frequency and microwave radiation published up to April 1972 are included in this bibliography of the world literature. Particular attention has been paid to the effects on man of non-ionizing radiation at these frequencies. The citations are arranged alphabetically, blah, 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 blah. But the bottom line is that here is a report freely available. You can find this report on the internet. It runs about 106 pages, I think it is. But you can clearly see that 50 years ago, there was a recognition that exposure to microwave had a negative impact on health. So people are asking the questions. Here is the response to a written question. 5G health hazards, a written question. Department of Digital Culture, Media and Sport, the same department that, of course, is financing all these studies in the universities. And here's the question. To ask the Secretary of State for Digital Culture, Media and Sport what assessment his department has made about the safety of 5G with respect to human health. And this was answered by Margot James. No idea who the hell she is, but anyway. Probably a civil servant within the department, which is, I think, isn't it Matthew? Can't think of mental block for a second. Anyway, the response is, 5G is the latest evolution of mobile communication technologies and currently in its development stages. 5G is likely to be deployed as part of a patchwork of technologies, including those already in use, such as advanced LTE, 4G, Wi-Fi, as well as 5G new radio, forming a network of networks of a heterogeneous nature. A considerable amount of research is being carried out on radio waves, and we anticipate no negative effects on public health. No reference to any of that research, and they haven't, because it's a written question, of course, there isn't even the opportunity to drill like in the Senate hearing. Just a considerable amount of research, which we're not going to reference, has been carried out on radio waves, and we anticipate no negative effects on public health. The government expects that existing UK technical standards will be adhered to throughout the development and deployment of 5G products and networks. These standards draw on the International Commission of Non-Ionizing Radiation Protection, which takes into account the well-researched effects of radio waves, without any referencing. As 5G continues to develop, the government is committed to working with Public Health England's Centre for Radiation, Chemical and Environmental Hazards in order to monitor available evidence and will take action if necessary. Can you pass me the sick bag when you finish with it? I mean, this is classic political obfuscation. There's basically, you could sum that answer up in one word: no. No. There are not any studies which look at the negative health impact of 5G. I'm not going to show this video clip, but you can find this online. Just put into your search engine Bournemouth and 5G. And what this video, a very quick, brief explanation. The video is basically showing how Ordnance Survey are being deployed around the country. So Ordnance Survey have found a revenue stream, and they are using the technology to map where 5G phone masts need to be positioned. Because of the frequencies that 5G operates on, there will need to be an antenna, an absolute maximum of every 300 metres. Every 300 metres. And here's the issue with 5G, and in this second video, there is actually one of the Ordnance Survey consultants who acknowledges that foliage is a massive problem for 5G signals, and even hanging baskets have a negative effect on 5G. Well, gasp of surprise. So, as John's already alluded to, the Sheffield tree culling was directly related to 5G. And the moment that this became common knowledge, and it became common knowledge almost exactly 1 year ago, because before that point, the tree culling in Sheffield had been regarded as something completely standalone. You know, there wasn't any apparent justification for this massive culling of trees in Sheffield, but eventually it became apparent that the program which was being administered by AMI, which is a Spanish civil engineering company, and AMI are very much a partner of Telefonica, who of course are right on point for rolling out the 5G technology. So Sheffield, of course, was clearly a designated 5G city. Well, initially the reaction from some of the tree campaigners was, no, this is just a rampant conspiracy theory. This is just about protecting the trees. So the Sheffield tree protection community then split into two. Those who could clearly see, because they did the research, that the tree culling was related to the 5G rollout, and those who wanted to keep the blinkers on and just focus on tree felling. And my response to the group, because the groups were, were getting into some pretty serious and somewhat fractious debate, and my point to these groups was, look, stop arguing and focus on what you agree on. And the people who don't want to see that it's related to 5G, just park it. Because the people that do perceive that this is related to 5G, they're still looking to achieve the same thing you are, which is the protection of the trees. So, this is from The Guardian. The felling are part of a 25-year, £2.2 billion public finance partnership contract signed in 2012 between the Labour-held council and the private company AMI.
5 minutes, Ian.
Okay.
10 minutes. 5 minutes.
Well, it'd be 5 by the time you finished arguing whether I got 10 or 5. Anyway. The contract has serious implications for the city's 36,000 trees. But even this was a construct, because the whole strategy was to keep the country focused on what was going on in Sheffield. So the people in Newcastle will go, oh, it's terrible what's happening in Sheffield, isn't it? Cutting all the trees down. Without realising that Newcastle Council was cutting down even more trees than Sheffield. So the trees are coming down right across the country to facilitate the implementation of 5G phone masts. And this is from the AMI website. Our decision to work with Telefonica UK as our strategic supplier across mobile, fixed voice and managed wide area network services means we're able to consolidate suppliers and work with one partner to help transform communications to support our business. So it didn't take a rocket scientist, it just took a little bit of investigative work to look at the relationship between AMI and Telefonica, the phone company. And of course, once the public in Sheffield got sufficient traction to link the tree culling with the 5G rollout, the council immediately put a moratorium on any further cuts because they didn't want the debate to go down the 5G route. So, of course, at that time, Sheffield was still trying to deny that it was going to be a 5G city, but this is from the government press release from March of last year. The Urban Connected Communities Project, key part of the industrial strategy and next step in the government's 5G testbed and trials programme, will develop a large-scale citywide testbed for 5G. And what a surprise when the 16 target areas are announced and Sheffield is right there amongst them. University of Surrey, a centre of 5G excellence, getting a bunch of money again from the British government and from the industry. And in this report, which again you can find, all you've got to punch in is University of Surrey, 5G and trees, and you will find this report. And section 3.1 is the crucial element. What the mast height at tree level is a limiting factor on reach and reliability. They provide nice graphics showing the problems that trees with foliage cause. And by the way, trees with foliage with raindrops on are a total block. An absolute total block, which is why they need to bring down the trees. It's why Network Rail are looking to surreptitiously cull 9 million trees from the rail network around the country to facilitate the European signalling system, which is due to roll out next year, which operates on 5G. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. What they're doing is they're saying, look, it's just 16 areas where we're going to test. But that's to keep people from seeing what's going on their back door. So here's the crucial quote from this report. The full national damage to mobile reach and reliability emerges from the data on UK tree heights. And data is plotted showing the absolute number of trees at heights from 0 to 25 metres. And the cumulative probability distribution, i.e. in terms of the propagation of the radio signals. So, concern, the installation of masts, and now the installation of masts is permitted development. In other words, once a phone company has gained access to a particular plot of land, then they don't have to get planning permission to put up a phone mast, provided it's less than 75 feet in an urban area or 85 feet in a rural area. And that's why you've got masts arising all around the country, and the local authorities saying, well, we don't know anything about it. That's not actually true, because the planning officers are supposed to be advised that these masts are going up, but nonetheless, they don't have to go through the process of making a planning application.
Just send us a notice 12 to the local council telling them I'm putting it there.
Right there, exactly. And of course, just down the road in Totnes or Dartington, last year, you had the protest by the parents about the erection of a phone mast right outside the school. And what we do know is that the brains, the cerebral functions of the developing brain are far more sensitive to EMF than the adult brain. So, the target here certainly is very much the children, just as with the... Oh, that's another subject. Okay, let's... is there a minimum legal distance that masts should be located away from a property? And look at this. Government guidance states the local planning authorities should not insist on minimum distances. And as Mark Steele has proven in Gateshead, the manufacturers actually state that the particular transmitter receiver on the LED streetlights should be at least 20 metres away from a property, particularly a property that has people who sleep there, and yet they're putting them literally on the walls of these houses. So, very quickly, Christopher, I'm just going to wrap this. So here's Mark Steele, and John has already introduced you to him, and I'm just going to share very quickly some of the quotes from the judge, because Gateshead Council are desperate not to answer the questions that Mark is addressing to them. So here's some of the quotes that I noted through the day when Justice Nolan was effectively telling Gateshead Council that he was not going to grant their injunction to prevent Mark from asking the hard questions. Mr. Steele is entitled to inform the public. I think this is very much in the public interest. I can see Mr. Steele has genuine concerns. I can see Mr. Steele is very knowledgeable on this matter. Freedom of speech is allowed in this country. There is nothing wrong with the defendant's campaign as long as it's legal. He's just getting up the council's nose. I'm not going to stop Mr. Steele's campaign. He just needs to behave himself. Well, good luck with that, because Mark's on a mission. And then the crucial statement by the judge towards the end of the hearing, where he told the council, this is democracy in action. Well, local authorities all around the country need to be held to account. There needs to be meetings like this in every town hall around the country. People need to go away, do their research, look at the freedom of information templates that Mark has put on his Save Us Now website. And if you're going to ask a freedom of information question, use the website whatdotheyknow.com. Because from the moment you use that website, the freedom of information request is in the public domain. If you send them a private email or a private letter, guess what? It's going to get lost somewhere. Once it's on whatdotheyknow.com, this is independently monitored, and there is a requirement for them to respond within the appropriate timescale. And obviously they are desperate to obfuscate and refuse to answer the questions because, as we have seen very clearly, and I believe you saw this earlier with Senator Blumenthal, no studies show that 5G is safe. So the precautionary principle should be applied, but it's not going to be applied regardless of the negative impact on human health, because by the time they've got it rolled out, too many people will need it to be able to function. And so, once again, it's divide the population between those who haven't yet seen the effects of this technology and those who don't want to see the effects of this technology affect anyone. So we have a massive challenge ahead of us. And, you know, what we've seen in Gateshead is councillors that will do anything to avoid asking the question, and they will literally do what they can to get Mark incarcerated. And so when we're back in Newcastle for the next hearing of Mark's on March 28th, and then there's a further hearing after that, because he's facing an appeal on his criminal conviction, and also the council are seeking to commit him to prison for breach of the injunction that Justice Nolan granted. But the breach was purely on the way he conducts himself, and they're now trying to jail him on the back of 2 emails and a phone call.
Sorry to stop the flow, but
I'm done.
Thank you very much.
We're going to have a 10-minute interval, and then we're going to come back again. So feel free if you want to use the toilet downstairs, or there's a little bit of water at the back. There's some stalls there as well. So. How you doing, my friend? And ask, let us know whether you want to continue the live stream, or whether or not you've seen enough and you want to leave it there, because obviously the next 10-15 minutes is just going to be pretty random before the Q&A starts. So we'll take your input, and from your response we'll decide whether or not the live stream continues. So thanks very much.
For those watching on the live stream, we're going to continue running for the question and answers session. So if you can stand by, we'll try our best to capture the question and answers. Kind of pretty limited with what we've got here, and it's very, very cramped. But we'll do what we can.
Can I get through or not?
Hopefully.
Okay, and then the next one. Maybe I was just thinking that. I was thinking of baby swans. Yeah, baby, so that could be, so we can have baby swans, sorry, baby ducklings, baby swans, mountain lions. What about baby? Oh, I was just thinking of baby chimpanzees. They are so sweet.
I'll just leave that there for the moment.
Alright everybody, we've tried to connect, having a few internet issues. Now, there's a form. Oh, Rafaela, sorry, I need to speak with you briefly. Rafaela. Sorry, Christopher. Can you get Rafaela for me a second, could you? That's a form. Sorry, Rafaela? So I'm going to do 4 seconds down. Sorry, so we've passed, a couple of forms were passed around through the interval, and the idea is for people who want to get together to form a community to combat this 5G, to keep in touch, to form a local support group, or to form support groups throughout the country to keep people updated about what's going on. Because I'm 100% behind stopping this. I'm willing to travel around the country, do absolutely everything that it takes to stop this. So we've got a couple of forms going around. Does anybody have it in this row?
One here.
Okay. Could we pass it back round from the front? I don't know if you could pass it through, and then because people were walking around and not everybody might have been able to sign it, so we're going to have everyone sitting down. Thanks, you could pass. And then we'll just pass it back round from the front to the back. And then this side, has anybody got one form with names? Could you pass it to the front? Just pass it through to the front, and then we'll just pass it so that no one's missed it in case they want to write down their details to stay in touch. Have we got? Yeah. So well, I'm going to send a mass mail. I thought that would be the best way that I could remember. Can we pass it through? Who has it here? Okay, sorry, can we, Junko? Can you pass it to the front? Thank you. Oh no, I need to pass it through from the front because some people didn't sign it. Please, thank you. Okay, and then those who have signed it, we just pass it along, and then we just pass it from the front to the back, and then this one.
Where do I send that one?
This one. So this. Do you have any other forms, or is it just the two? Okay. Or just, what you could do, just pass it to the front and back to the back again. Okay, should we pass this along here? Okay, some people haven't signed it. Okay. That's great. So we're trying to get the Empower movement on through Skype to talk about what are the notices of liability. And they've had success with them abroad where it's a notice of liability that operates under natural law, and it's sent to the CEO, governor, councillor, etc., to hold them liable for harm, and it's using their Christian name. Now Barry talked about holding people liable using their real name without their title, and they've had resignations, and it's something I'm interested in, and I thought we could connect with them. Now even though we can't get them online tonight, if you'd like to know more, I'll send out the information. And what I thought would be great to have a bit of feedback, so that if people have questions or answers, One thing we're also doing, Jake over here is making a special video, thanks Jake, for our YouTube. He got 50, we had Dr. Graham Downing talking at the Totnes event a few months ago. Now we had 125 people there, but 65,000 people saw the YouTube video shared on his channel. So the idea is that we get this out on his channel as well, and then we get, and obviously Ian's very kindly live, so we've got masses of viewers through Ian. Thank you, Ian, and that's made a massive difference.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Richard. Yeah, so we're all working together. It's amazing. But those who are interested in, doing another event in a local village or town, or contributing, making a donation, whatever, towards a YouTube with a website, there's Christopher with a bucket at the end. So those who would like to support or who are able to, feel free to. And I just
donations if you want to help the fighting fund. So it'll be in the door afterwards.
Yeah. But anybody who has ideas or support about getting around the country to do these events, I think that's fantastic.
Can I make an observation? Yeah. I think one of the crucial elements, and I'm going to share some of the experiences of the anti-fracking campaign, because the anti-fracking campaign has been the most successful social and environmental movement this country's seen in a long time. And what is really crucial about driving community activism is to change vocabulary. And when we started the anti-fracking awareness back in 2012, 2013, we had advice coming out of the proverbial yin-yang. And the language was, have you thought of, what about, why don't you? And this was just becoming crazy. The one thing that we do not have and isn't likely to manifest is anyone with a big S on their chest and a blue cape over their shoulder, or riding a white charger. So this absolutely comes down to each and every one of us. So the vocabulary needs to be, I am going to do, I have done, I will do, or I am going to do. But to change from, if you like, the passive, suggestive, to the active. And this is what has built the very successful anti-fracking campaign. So, what we have is multiple groups around the country. The anti-fracking campaign, the generic, has launched over 40 legal challenges over the past 6 years. Some financed by individuals, others financed through crowd justice. So, it needs initiative. We do not still have the panacea, it seems, to finally shut down fracking in England. It's been the methodology has been found in Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland, but not in England yet. So the creativity of individuals and community groups has to be literally unstifled. And basically, if you think of an idea, you got the job. Go for it. And you can spot the spoilers, because the spoilers are the ones who, obviously there's constructive observation, there's constructive criticism, but the spoilers are the ones who then set out to find ways to block. And when that happens, don't waste time, don't waste energy with those people, simply move aside. And sometimes this means, and I can think of one particular group in East Yorkshire, they've done tremendous work, but then somebody arrived and said, oh look, I'm an expert on websites. I'll take care of your website. Let me have all the passcodes. And what do you know? Within 3 months, they had effectively destroyed the effectiveness of that group. And the group was distraught. And I said, look, basically you can fight to get it back, but you've lost. So the smart thing to do is shake it off and go start again. And build up from the ground zero. And the beauty of being so unstructured is when you do get infiltrators, and you will get infiltrators because there are people who have a very heavy vested interest in this rollout, as you saw from Tom Wheeler's dissertation. So they will manifest. But when that occurs, at least they only can influence one small area. And if you're smart, then you simply, basically eventually just cold shoulder them and carry on doing what you're doing, without them. So this is very challenging, but it's crucial. It's crucial that people actually accept that each and every one of us has a role to play. Each one of us has different skills, different abilities, different resources, different time commitments, etc., etc. But whatever it is that we feel we can do, it's time to bring it. And if you find that you're in a group and for whatever reason you don't like the way that group's going, or you don't like some of the directions that they're taking, simply start up your own group. Because if I had my way, every street in the country would have an anti-fracking group. Now that's pie in the sky. But nonetheless, in some communities, we certainly have 2 or 3 groups who may not necessarily agree with the strategy that the other groups are taking, but they don't waste time dissing it. They carry on doing what they're doing, and that is what will nail this, because we don't have time, and all we've got to do is keep asking the hard questions and making it clear that when we don't get a hard answer, that we are going to keep holding their feet to the fire, because these people go into public office to represent their communities, or they should be going into office to represent their communities. Maybe some of them have another agenda. So, now is the time to make sure that they understand who they truly work for.
Our local MP did not turn up, by the way, tonight. She was invited, Sarah Wollaston, and invited to the last event we had in Totnes on 5G. And of course she didn't come to that. And it's not the first time. We've had Barry Trower talking about 5G again and again. And he's explained that these industries, they own the MPs. It's $1 trillion industry, the telecommunications industry. It's now bigger than the pharmaceutical industry. They own the MPs. Okay? But someone has to sign off on these masts. These people sign, and they're liable. And in Barry's video, he states that. But I completely agree with what Ian said, and how I got to know Ian. I actually saw his video, Fractured Future, I think it was, the presentation.
Yes, the presentation.
When you were going around the country on YouTube.
Yep.
And I thought, wow, this is so serious, fracking, about what it's doing to the land, about how it's disenfranchising farmers and just ruining their livelihood. And then I found out about his event, AV9. And then my friend John, we went together, and I got connected with Mark. And it's just funny how things happen, but I think one of the most important things is following your heart. Really following your heart. What's the best thing to do? Go to your heart. And we've got to look out for each other, and community is where it's at. Okay, you can go home, watch TV, but if you don't have other people, where's the happiness in that? Where's the support structure? And there's something amazing that we have in Totnes, where we meet once a week, like-minded people, we have a cup of tea. And Derek, who helped me get this together tonight, he wants to have something like that here as well in Buckfastleigh. Support communities, looking out for each other, tackling problems at a local level. Because we can't depend on the centralisation with the government anymore. We've got to look out for each other, go for it at the local level. And I think this...
wants to start one in Exeter or East Devon or someplace here, will help.
Fantastic. Let's get it going, definitely. And it's such an honour. I think it's been, great to do this with you, Ian. I really appreciate you coming, and I think we kind of gel well together. And it's great to have you here. I'm really happy that we sold out. Is there anything you wanted to say else, or shall I open it up for Q&A?
Open up.
Okay. Any questions? Anyone want to fire a question? Yes, Louise. Did you want to? How far this will stretch?
Hi, Ian. Could you just go over again about coming out of the EU and Brexit? Some people were a little bit confused. Could you just mention about Brexit? Could you go over that once more?
The question is, can I expand on Brexit?
Yeah, just like just a tiny bit. Some people were a bit confused.
Okay, some people were confused. I mean, listen. wherever anyone stands on Brexit now, and I mean, let me make it very clear that I've been an advocate for Brexit for a long time. My observation was that we were going to be manipulated, even if the vote had gone to remain, which I believe it didn't, but I believe that the vote was actually much greater than 52%. Anecdotally, from around the country, it leads me to believe that the vote was much higher than 52% to leave, but they wanted it relatively close because then that way they could play the shenanigans that they've been playing for 2.5 years. But look, the bottom line is that where we're at right now, the decision was taken to leave. And hopefully on March 29th, we're going to leave. But the reality is that we are about to go into a period where some people will go into meltdown because nothing will have prepared them for what is probably going to be unleashed after Brexit. I mean, you know, look at what's occurring in France right now. And, you know, this is now, what, week 15 or so of the Elevest protest, and you look at the brutality that's being deployed by the CRS, and in my opinion, there are other riot police coming across the border into France. This is something that I actually discussed back in 2008, when the treaties were signed to cross-train the various police forces around Europe. And of course you don't put your police against your own community. I mean, this is what happened in the miners' strike. You know, you never put the police from that area up against the miners in a particular area. They came from all over the country. So, you know, we are going to go into a period of absolute chaos. And I've got to tell you, I love chaos. I absolutely love chaos. Because what you see, most people have an attachment to an outcome. I don't. I never have an attachment to an outcome, because if we attach ourselves to a particular outcome, we may actually be limiting what's possible. So, you know, keep an open mind. Obviously, we have an ideal that we'd like to attain, but maybe we think something's going to happen that could be even better than that ideal. So, the other thing about chaos is it gives the opportunity for the law of unintended consequences to kick in. And the law of unintended consequences tends to work very much in our favour and not that of the establishment. So, you know, we shouldn't be fearful about what's going to happen, but we should embrace the opportunity. You know, I think this is a very, very exciting time to be alive. You know, because most people, unfortunately, live their lives they're not living their lives, they exist. You know, they exist, they're in a routine. And, you know, there's not that much excitement. They're just part of the slave operation of corporatism. But, you know, this is an opportunity to really go beyond that and leave a legacy for future generations that is vastly superior to the legacy that unfortunately is clear if we, one, remained in the EU, or two, allow the corporatists to dictate how life will be lived post-Brexit. They are relying on our apathy. That is the most powerful tool that the establishment and the corporatists have. Our apathy. And once we step out of that apathy, then, you know, a whole new world is possible.
Any more questions? Any more questions?
Richard?
Yes.
Notice of liability.
Okay.
A template for the UK.
Yes, good question. So there's a smart meter notice of liability going out on March the 3rd. Now, if anyone has a smart meter or wants to participate in that, I just consider it's important to have all options on the table. Okay, so although we haven't tried it, I'm up for trying it. If you'd like to know about that, then we can email that information out. Who would be more interested to do a notice of liability? Hands up. So that's sort of half the room there, isn't it? Okay. So we'll put out a mass mail and then,
let me just make the observation.
Yep.
Listen, if this is going to be effective, it needs to go through the appropriate reviews. And that means people with the appropriate experience, and there are people in the legal profession who are very much supportive of what we do, but rather than go at something half-cocked, I think it's really important that, because this has been mooted for a number of years, and as yet, we do not have a workable notice of liability in the UK. So, not yet. So, I absolutely agree with John. I think this is a tremendous opportunity, but rather than go off half-cocked and even give a heads up of what's coming, I think, we need to get the template into this country, get it reviewed by people who know what they're looking at, make sure that it is pertinent to what we're trying to do in this country, and then literally go for broke.
Completely agree. Yeah. Well, yeah, we've just got to get it fully. Once we've got it over here in the UK, and like you said, we've got a workable copy, which is in the works very soon. We can go full throttle with it, so I think that's great. Yeah. So, any more questions? Sorry, it's gone dim. Yep. Okay.
When are you going to start putting these criminals in jail?
Yeah, you've got to start waking people up. Waking up people up.
This liability thing is all well and good, but what they do is resign, and then it's replaced by some other muppet. When they start going to prison, when they start losing their houses, we take their houses away from them, then they'll stop.
We have to wake more people up.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
First, that's what we're in the process of doing.
It is a case of baby steps. I get people who respond to my various videos saying, "Oh, why don't you talk about this? Why don't you talk about this? Why don't you talk about this?" Well, first of all, we can't talk about everything in 30 minutes. But the crucial element is to keep it real, because there are certain subjects, and I don't even need to mention them, but there are certain subjects that the moment that you use those subjects to try and accelerate your case, you effectively shoot yourself in the foot. So we have to keep taking as many people as possible with baby steps. There's no point in trying to teach the PhD course where everybody around you is still doing GCSEs. So we've got to work with the level of awareness that we have. And the wonderful thing is that the level of awareness now is a long way beyond what it was even a year ago, let alone a decade ago. So we're going in the right direction. And what we're seeking to achieve isn't going to happen perhaps in the ideal timescale, which will be tomorrow. But nonetheless, we're making progress. Somebody with a hand up by the light there, I can see the shadow.
Why do LED streetlights need to be telecommunicating?
Well, supposedly they are control mechanisms, although they don't seem to work very well, because there are increasing reports of LED streetlights being erected and then being left on all day. There are two issues with the LED streetlights. One is ultimately the 5G control, but there's also the issue of the light frequency itself. And it's the blue light that is the particular problem. And if any of you have got a Samsung phone, then if you look in the settings, you will find a blue light filter. And this is the recognition that blue light is a hormone disruptor. And this is why, in fact, it's the University of Exeter. The University of Exeter, in conjunction with the Barcelona Institute for Global Health, they have produced a report. So all you've got to do is punch in University of Exeter LED streetlights and you will find this report. But they worked with the Barcelona Institute and they did two separate studies from two locations in Spain with LED streetlights. And in both cases they found there was a marked increase in breast cancer in women and prostate cancer in the men. And the reason that these two cancers increased is because blue light affects the circadian rhythm, which of course impacts on the hormonal balance. And once the hormonal balance is compromised, then the immune system is compromised, and the first place to be attacked is the breast for the women and the prostate for the men. So Samsung have put a blue light filter in. I gather that there are apps that you can download as a blue light protector. And if you're driving along smart motorways which have these LED lights, and Mark has made the observation that these are particularly dangerous to people who work nights. particularly like, for example, emergency workers who are exposed excessively to these LED street lights without the blue light filter. And it says that, you know, these are the people that are going to suffer first. Now, you can counter that. You can get they're relatively cheap, the yellow driving glasses. And I do quite a lot of miles up and down the motorway. So, yeah, the yellow glasses are the perfect filter for the streetlights. And, of course, it's not just the streetlights. A lot of the modern cars have LED headlights. And if you notice, when they go over a bump, you get a flash, you get a glare. And that's a blue light glare. And when that happens, you don't realise it. I mean, the brain doesn't sort of pick up the impact, but the body certainly does. And, of course, it's a delayed reaction. So, you know, these studies are there, but, of course, in Gateshead, they've rolled out 31,000 odd of these LED streetlights, and they just don't want to talk about it. So it's a multiple problem. And then the 5G element is, you know, is the antenna and the control system. And, of course, it's far beyond just a lighting control system. It's actually part of that phased array, that interrogation system that I talked about earlier.
Also, sorry, the lights communicate with each other so that they synchronise together.
Yeah. And ultimately, by the way, the next stage of Wi-Fi is Li-Fi. It's using light frequencies to transmit data. And this is being experimented with, and of course, as yet, it's so embryonic that nobody's even bothered to look at the negative health impact of using Li-Fi. So if you've got LED lights in your ceiling that are flickering at a rate that's undetectable by the human eye, but maybe not undetectable by the human brain, then obviously it's a potential disaster waiting to happen. But as we saw again with Tom Wheeler, there is so much in terms of corporatist attachment to this agenda that they're not going to entertain any suggestion that there is any risk here.
Have you heard of the Highlands Forum?
The Highland Forum? No.
It's apparently it's a place in Scotland which is run by CIA. Is this going to be linked with 5G at all?
I have no idea. I mean, the CIA and the American... I mean, you know, listen, I would be very interested in finding out what the cancer statistics are around Harrogate, you know, for the people who live in the lee of Menwith Hill. You know, I mean, there are areas of the country which I think are a real concern, and, you know, nobody's looking at the statistics of these areas. And so, you know, obviously the UK, the US and Australia have these are the sort of, was it the 3 eyes listening to the world? But the transmitters and phased array capability of these areas is, I think, a high risk.
Is there somebody here that is a technician or an engineer that I could talk to later so that at future events like this, I mean, I don't understand the technical reasons, even though you have explained them, so that in future when you're going to events, you could actually, and you want to stream them, but it could not be over the Wi-Fi signal. And I'd really like to support that so that that doesn't happen for future people, because I'm very sensitive. So if there is somebody here that's got that expertise, and they could talk to me later, and perhaps then I could, I don't know, perhaps help buy the cables or whatever. Yeah, just I want to offer that.
Yeah. Wi-Fi is constantly emitting from the town hall automatically, and it's not something we have authority to turn off. But you know, events like these will raise awareness to people about why Wi-Fi everywhere is such a massive health problem. You know, and why we need to wire things up around the country and in the home. Got to start at home, wake people up. You know, it's extremely important, but not enough people are awake to the problem. And with 5G, it's going to be on a whole different level.
The question was, can events like this be conducted without using Wi-Fi? And of course it's possible.
Try our best, yeah,
it's possible. So we have to look at the logistics of it.
The question is further back. Have you noticed those? Quite a few.
Sorry, I can't see because the
Can
lights
you
have gone
see further
down.
back?
See if I can go back.
People have got questions.
Yeah, okay, this chap just...
Just for the benefit of some of the people who might not be present, some of the people might not have heard of the technicals of the information, can you talk for a couple of minutes on the significance of phase array? Because it is quite a significant subject.
Right, phased array. So what I understand about
Could you
phased
repeat the
array-
question, please? Because we can't always hear.
Okay, yes, sorry. So you asked about the specifics of phased array and what it's about, right? Phased array, okay. I don't have a technical background, but my knowledge of phased array, Mark Steele has talked about it, and Barry Trower, that it's right at the higher end of the 5G frequency range, and that it will be used by military, police. There's something it's nicknamed the growler that uses this frequency, and it can be used, it's basically a weapon. And Barry's talked a little bit about this in my interview, and Mark Steele, they have more technical knowledge than I do, but it sounds like it's a very, very bad thing indeed. That's all I know.
John. Back, up in the back corner. Over here.
Sorry.
It's over here.
Yeah.
Okay. Phased array is where it overlays a series of signals overlapping each other. So gradually at the focal point, a phased array is where they use a number of antennae together, and at the focal point where the signals come together, you will actually get a weaponized radar signal.
Sounds like this.
Very much like that type of thing, but it is a classic one is the old-fashioned chain home system that was built to defend the UK in the Second World War. When they turned it on at Ventnor every day, there was an RAF guy, an ERC, lowest of the low, used to go up and sweep the birds away, because when it switched on, it cooked everything within 4 feet of the wires. When you go on a ship, a naval ship, there is a marker around the transmitters. And it says, when we transmit, do not step inside them. That's an EMF force caused by radio transmission, radar transmissions. I'm an ex-naval engineer, nuclear personally, but I had to know what the ship was doing, or the vessel was doing, so that we could transmit back to our base. For those of you who are concerned about signals and whether or not we could do a presentation without Wi-Fi, the answer is we couldn't. Even if we turn the town hall off, we've got Orange, Stuxnet, TalkTalk, Buckfast PS, Jellyfish banging their signals into this room.
So you get the Wi-Fi from Buckfastleigh Primary School in here?
Yes.
Yeah, so it travels from there all the way to the building, through that wall, and my daughter goes to that school.
Yeah. There's the list.
Plus we've got a smart meter downstairs as well.
Yeah. Okay, that's the smart meters work on the radio frequencies of which your phones work. Anybody on O2 in here? Right. You compete with your nearest transmitter with smart meters. O2 is run by Telefonica. Telefonica is part of the group that is doing the rollout of smart meters, and that's where all the signals going back to your energy supplier come through. They use a technology called RIP, which is the shortest path to the network. Unfortunately, RIP technology, which we've been using for nearly 20 years, is outdated, because the device, your smart meter, sitting there going, hey, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here, all the time. So you start putting more and more meters in, they're all going, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here, and they're all shouting. And they have to raise their signal strength to overcome the interference. We in the industry, and that's where actually I'm now working, we have dropped RIP 10 or 15 years ago. We use other protocols that say, set the network up, when something changes, let us know. Otherwise, stay as you are. And that's done on a regular basis, and that means that transmitters are not working hard. The other, talking about locally, the O2 mast at Shinner's Bridge. If I was the project manager setting that up, the person who decided to put the mast in that location would be walking around with his crown jewels behind his ears, because I'd have kicked him so hard for putting it in the bowl. That's why they want a bigger one. Right? I can write a section 12 document and say, here you are, South Hams or Teambridge or whoever, I am putting a mast on this piece of land. Bang. So long as I keep it below the 15 metres. I can do that anywhere in the country.
Thanks, Chris.
And the point is, Shinner's Bridge unit has to work really, really hard. Just look at the environment in which it's in. It's in a dip. What's it surrounded by? Trees, masses of them. And in the summer, that transmitter will be working absolutely overload. And if we then get a rain shower, half of the O2 equipment surrounding it, particularly kit in Top Nest, because that's the nearest one, will not make communication.
Right. Thanks, Chris. All right. Someone over here? Yep.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out for anyone that didn't know that Wi-Fi 2.45 gigahertz is exactly the same frequency as a microwave oven, and a microwave oven is shielded, and a router or a phone is not.
Any other questions? Oh, yep.
So, I'll shout it out. Okay, so we get the idea that we're bombarded with Wi-Fi and the telecom antennas and everything that is happening around those smart meters. Two questions. The first is to take action, people that are now aware of there might be some health issues or damage to humans and any biological, the environment. Can we sign a petition? Is there something at the national level that a petition to the government to look into it, to put pressure into the government? One thing. And the other is there somebody in the neighborhood that is actually measuring EMFs? Somebody that is providing services so you can go and check in your house how bad it is?
That's a very good question. And I mean, you know, hey, listen, you can get EMF meters. They're not particularly expensive. Obviously, the more expensive, like all things, more expensive, then you know, the more accurate they're likely to be. And certainly, that is absolutely something that I think communities should be looking at doing. There we go. You know, and looking at purchasing one of these devices and offering that service around so that people can see what the level of EMF is in their house. Let me come back to the question of petitions, and I'm sorry to be quite so frank, but I hate petitions with a vengeance. The reason being is because they are uniquely British and they are disempowering. They are extremely disempowering. And that's why the establishment loves petitions. If you go to Downing Street, stand at the gates of Downing Street, and every 15 minutes throughout the day, somebody or a small group comes along, goes through security, and they have 15 to 20 minutes where they can stand outside number 10 Downing Street to deal with the media that they've invited along. And then they go along to number 10, they knock on the door, and a guy in a nice crisp white shirt and a tie comes to the door, and he says, "Thank you very much, I'll make sure Mrs. May sees it immediately." And of course, as soon as he shut the door, it goes in the bin. You know, it's a social safety valve. It's like the one-day protest, particularly the one-day protest on a Saturday. Except in France, of course. But in the UK, you know, one-day protests, they're a nice day out. Everybody has a great time, and don't get me wrong, they're great for networking. But there's absolutely no benefit whatsoever, no traction will be gained in terms of the one-day protest. First of all, the MPs are all back in their constituencies, and the only people who benefit are the transport companies for getting people into London, and the food and drinks vendors, and the police for a little bit of riot training, perhaps. And petitions, then the problem with petitions is that people think that once they've signed it, that's all they need to do. I've signed the petition, and that's it. It's all over. It's all done. It's all dusted. So we have to be more proactive and not be looking at something that is potentially just reactive and has no long-term benefit. And we have the same issue in fracking, and groups will start petitions within their communities just to get email addresses. If you have a table in the town square and you say, will you sign this petition and give us your email address, you're interested, it's a good way. Whether you're going to do anything with that petition is almost irrelevant, because the benefit of that is that you are getting people's interest, you're getting their email address, and then obviously you're building a network that you can work with, like tonight. So I'm sorry, but a lot of people put a lot of effort into petitions, but actually, in the scheme of things, I don't know of a petition that has ever had any meaningful impact.
I'd like to second what Ian's saying. I completely agree.
Visiting school had a petition nationally on this card for fishing, and it got that changed.
Okay, maybe there's the odd exception that proves the rule.
Also, just one quick thing about measuring Wi-Fi with microwave meters. There's Alan at the back, who's a qualified electrician. I forgot to mention him at the beginning. I apologise. So he's also a bit... yep. Oh, sorry, yep, we've got a new person.
A lot of us came because we are concerned about the health effects of 5G and Wi-Fi. I would just like to remind all of you that health is something very personal. And we've been talking about the actions that we can take, and in a way we all have the choice to take actions daily. And especially around here, I can just highly recommend things like Tai Chi, Qigong, yoga, good nutrition. We're really blessed in and around Totnes to have one of the most amazing places in the country to really get active on an everyday basis. Things like the effects of EMF and Wi-Fi have been already studied by people like Dr. Wilhelm Reich in the 1930s, so we do some research into this work. Organite comes all out of that, is something external that you can do, but I really highly recommend internal work like Qigong and Tai Chi, just to give you something that really helps you to boost your health against all the negative effects of EMF and Wi-Fi and 5G and all these things. Thank you for listening.
Do you think appreciate what you said? That's very interesting. Can you confirm your first name today?
Raphael.
Okay, please speak to me afterwards. Thanks.
Yes, I'm the guy who sells Organite on the Totnes market tomorrow. If you want to come around and have a chat, because I heard you do build an Organite bubble, that would be really interesting. And because I know that there's things that we can do externally that helps against the radiation, but there's also things we can do internally. But there's so much that can be done, but it needs to start on a personal level. And this radiation really affects the cells, as we've seen in the video, and so you can do something against that. And the best way I know is Qigong and Tai Chi, but things like Organite are also really effective. But I just want to remind people that we have the power to look after our own health.
Hi everybody, I just wanted to let everybody know that okay. I just wanted to let everybody know that the last couple of years I've been, because Ian's talking about the communities coming together. A couple of years ago I've been electro-sensitive for a long while, and sometimes people like that act like canaries, so you start looking into all the information. You start talking about this stuff, and obviously it triggers people because they haven't actually got the information like we've got here all in one place. So events like this are extremely important, because there seems to be like a nervousness about going on the internet now in case you're a conspiracy theorist. And I think that is a weapon in itself. People actually saying that, it shuts people down, and you can't do this anymore. Anyway, what I want to talk about is that a couple of years ago I became really, really concerned about this, of course, and I knew that this would actually split communities, and that's what's going to be happening now, especially now that we just found out that ecotricity and good energy are not taking out smart meters anymore. So it's gone to the next level. Anyway, I just want you to know that there's a community, well, a street square in Dartington where we've come together and is saying no to smart meters. And it's taken a while because we've all got lots of different beliefs and understandings about life. And I just want you to know that despite our different beliefs and understandings about what's going on, that we've united in a decision to come together and say no to smart meters. And I hope that it's my intention that if maybe people would like to put this, designed it, so that's a shaking, our hands, that it's a kind of something that looks beautiful and also powerful. And it's lots of people coming together, and I hope that you can all just stick. We've got smart meter, a website here that's not quite been activated yet, and I might need a little bit of tech help from someone who is kosher. And so I hope that you put these in your on your windows and on your doors, and it inspires action and get people talking with each other. So there's websites on here that enable people to look at the different types of information like Empower, Electro-sensitive, all the things that you can do, and some good websites including 5G awareness. So I hope that we all start talking and questioning. We've got to keep questioning, because this is not okay to shut each other down. And although it's extremely difficult to talk about all of this to people. So, share this video tonight, and thank you very much for doing this. Thank you.
And we're showing this beautiful artwork here on the clock. Safe, not smart. Now, isn't that great? Can we get a round of applause for that?
5 minutes maximum, because we've got all these by 10:30. So just 1 or 2 or 3 more questions.
Okay, got a new person. Okay, go. Yeah. Are you the doctor? Are you?
I just wanted to offer wise, not smart.
Wise, not smart.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I'm a bit naive, but I will ask anyway. Do you know the Raditech that helps with the geopathic stress? You know, that if you put it in your house, it kind of cleanses all that stress from your house.
Okay.
So does anybody know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yes. I'm asking about the Raditech that when you put it in your house, it's like an instrument. Today you can get ones without plugging them into the electricity socket that cleanses your home from geopathic stress, which runs through the earth. So I don't know if there is such a thing to help cleanse your environment from all these things.
Might be related to what you're saying. Does it stall at the back on EMF?
We have to get the pollution down, and there are some experts around the world and scientists around the world, and they say be careful, when you're being sold gadgets that might cleanse or reduce the pollution. We have to get the pollution down. I've put orgonite around things and then put a meter beside it, and the radiation is completely undimmed. So let's start. Well, it might be uplifting, but it doesn't reduce the radiation. I'm sorry, I have to say.
Christopher, are we out of time? Almost. Anna, go on.
One to the woman that talked about petitions. The in-power movement that we were talking about before in terms of the notice of liability, when that comes out, that's going to be really powerful, because the way these corporates have got away with what they're doing is by what they call implied consent. And in our silence, we're basically saying yes. So what the notice of liability does is it withdraws consent, and it lets them know that we do not consent, and that is the principle upon which we can act that is far more powerful than a petition. So when the notice of liability is ready, we will let everybody know about that.
I wonder if there is another bandwidth available, because I'm hearing how bad this is, and it's not a flowing wave that's going through us. Is there another bandwidth that our devices can be using, because they've used the most devastating bandwidth there is?
YouTube? Oh, 5G awareness. YouTube channel.
Oh, that's the one that's
on the flyer.
event.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah.
You can answer.
Yep. Okay. Yes.
Do you want to say something?
You say what you want to say. I'll add to it.
I've been reading a really amazing book called The Electric Rainbow. I'd recommend it to everybody in this room. There's a really amazing book called The Electric Rainbow. I'd recommend everybody reads it. It's about the history of humanity and electricity. And basically, to answer about the bandwidth question, since the days where we had one wire with somebody, which was say 3 miles long, with somebody tapping on the end of it with making Morse code, it made the person who did the Morse code ill, and it made all the people around the wire ill. And it's an illness called neurasthenia. We call it electro-sensitivity today. And I don't think from reading that book that there's any bandwidths that we can use that don't harm us in the present way we use electricity and radio and microwaves, from my knowledge and experience.
Can add to that. Yeah, I can add a bit to that. I've got 9 years alternative energy research, mainly on Nikola Tesla. Nikola Tesla, not only did he invent alternating current, he abandoned alternating current in 1898 in favour of a system that would send communication and power through the Earth. We could all have free communication using the Earth as a conductor, riding on the 7.83 megahertz of Schumann resonance, which is the natural oscillation of the planet and the natural oscillation that our brains oscillate at. And we've been denied it by the bankers that funded him.
Questions, but if we could, we've got to be out of the building by past. So thanks to everyone who came, thanks to our two main presenters, and if you have a few bits and pieces, we've got a fund to fight 5G. If you'd like to put an extra donation as you go out, that'll help the fighting fund.
Thank you for coming, everybody. You're all awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
I'll move that way with you. It's tricky.
Sean, are you alright? Gotta find that couple now. Gotta find Julie. Blinding that light.